You good? You good? All right. You're not singing to it?
Okay.
It's a B-side.
Yeah. Welcome to B-Sides Passwords Conference. Right now you have, Lance James talking about is pavlovian password management the answer? This would be about a 30-minute talk and probably have time at the end for questions.
Or discussion.
Or discussion. Cool.
Hi, everybody. How is everybody? Going to go around the room. My name is Lance, and I'm not an alcoholic. Wait, can't say much. My name's Lance, and we're all alcoholics. So, cheers, everyone. So, this stays in this room, non-Deloitte issue here, but I came up with this idea while taking a piss. It was really fun because I wasn't thinking about shit. So, and next thing you know, and I don't even deal with passwords all day, so it was just one of those things. But I do deal with that's a picture of me. So basically, I deal with like cyber intelligence at Deloitte, which I know people like Deloitte, but we are getting better and getting into the cyberspace pretty heavily. And so one of the things that I deal with though is a lot of the actual psychological side of it, not just the counterintelligence from the computer, but that's just the domain, right? That's just literally land, air, space, sea, and cyber is yet another domain. It's a more complex domain in some senses, but a lot of that deals with psychological perspective, strategy of thinking, how people work, cognitive abilities. So we have a section in our department, our R&D department, that focuses around, kind of what we call mindscapes, kind of, psychological perspectives inside of the actual work we do, right? How does our adversary think like that? But then I realized, one of the biggest problems that we have today in security is, we have the security versus convenience models. We have all these interesting things with the marketing, the battles between marketing. The ironic part is marketing has found a way to use security research, and that's when you find things like APT1 reports and things laying around. But basically, we've been kind of running against it, and we spent time calling, at work and inside the environment, the corporate IT department or whatever, and assuming the users are stupid. But that's kind of like saying a race car driver is assuming normal car drivers are stupid, right? Like we're computer, experts as they would call us, but the demand in the business today isn't really about like being an expert on that. It's just a platform they need to use to do business, right? And ironically, I saw something that was funny, was like the summer rush. It was like the Deloitte, like, change your passwords early, okay, don't beat the summer rush. And it was really funny because I'm like trying to figure out, I wonder what that's really about. Like, there's a summer rush for passwords, So I was like, really, I better get on it, right? And I was actually kind of thinking, is this a fish? Because it made me want to like do something, right? And if you notice, look at phishing, and my background originally is in phishing and stuff, is that exploitation of incentive or fear or moving people. And you're hacking the human, you're layer 8, right? So the ironic part about that is the summer rush really kind of does prevent the IT department getting the same day all these calls with them screwing up when they actually like put in their password. So it actually saves from a ton of calls if you do beat the summer rush. But I thought the actual idea was pretty intelligent in some ways. I mean, it was kind of weird at first, but then I realized actually that could minimize or get people to kind of move, right? So I'm going to kind of go into this. Like, this idea hit me a while back. And even though I call it Pavlovian Password Management Protocol, right, which I really just called it that because it sounded sexy, and we needed a 4-letter acronym for some kind of protocol, right? So one of the things that really is actually what's called operant conditioning. So it's the difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning, which is B.F. Skinner's work versus Ivan Pavlov's work. But actually, the gamification of this, actually getting people to do the idea, does beat with the classical condition, because your neutralization, the neutral idea is how we already treat our passwords today, how we deal with this. We've become kind of in a trance just dealing with this stuff. And so I started looking at realizing that the classical part is we do want our users to salivate when choosing a good passphrase. So that part is Pavlovian, but the actual technique we're going to use is actually what's called operant conditioning. Is anybody familiar with B.F. Skinner's work? Pigeons and missiles and things like that? Okay, cool. So he's a behavioral analyst, and he's a behavioral scientist originally, right? Probably one of the foremost names in behavior science for actually coming up with this stuff. But it's really kind of like parents in here. Anybody parents? Raise your hand. Okay. So you know about the punishment and reward systems, right? Guilt complex are the negative concepts to modify behavior. So basically, operant conditioning comes down into basically 2 categories: reinforcement and punishment. So to increase behavior, we want to reinforce things. Positive reward. I'm a manager at work, And I've mentored other people trying to teach them management skills, and sometimes they'll just focus on the bottom line and focus on the things that they didn't do right. And I'm like, well, you forgot to reward them. Let them know the things they did really well. Because when it comes down to the bottom line, those people will follow you anywhere if they actually feel like they also get that reward piece to it, right? So these things are important, in soft skills is what we call it in the corporate world, right? And then we also have punishment, decreasing behavior, right? So on both sides, we have positive and negative, right? We add a stimulus following correct behavior, similar to training a dog, right? Give the dog a treat. We have our negative, which is basically negative reinforcement is basically to remove a stimuli that's not wanted in some senses, right? Now, the concepts here that I'm going to be talking about more are focused on the positive, because the idea in this is we've been spending time punishing our users for a long time and just telling them what to do. I think one of the biggest things is that also in this concept, we want to give the user a feeling of control of their own fate, right? The more people feel like, you'd be surprised how many users or people in the world want to learn stuff, right? And so I think that's one of the things I've been exploring is how if you sit down with someone, you actually realize, hey, they actually want to know more about information like this. Now, if I could slow down enough to teach them this stuff in my speech, I think they'd actually go, hey, this is actually interesting, right? So on the punishment side, we obviously have the positive and the negative as well, where we add a nauseous stimulus, following behavior for positive, spanking a child or whatever, which is probably illegal today, but there's the example. And then negative, obviously removing something. So my parents, when I get misbehaved, I practiced violin all the time when I was young, and I loved it. I used to sleep with the dang case right there, and if I misbehaved, they took it away, and it made me cry all night, right? So, we're gonna really talk about the positive sides of both reinforcement and punishment, right? So we're not gonna actually really focus on the negative or taking them away. We're gonna give it all to them, right? So here's some examples that are actually viewable. Child completing homework, the result is a reward, right? Employees finishing a project, you get praise from your boss. You might actually get a bonus, a long-term reward, things like that. You're going to get a lot of wow, this rocked. You guys did a great job, right? You might get eminence. You might get, you'll see that reward, right? If you have a good boss. Child not completing homework obviously results in a punishment. Either take something away, their Xbox One or whatever. Which, by the way, parents, is a really good idea. You got to get strict on that, guys. And then, so employees not finishing project obviously can cause a detriment in a bonus or performance review, possibly getting fired. So obviously these are real basics, right? So we're going to look at reinforcement and punishment, but on the positive side. So has anybody heard of the psychology of flow? We live in this. We're hackers types, right? And those times you just can't go to bed and you can't sleep because you're in the mode and you're coding and you're doing, whatever, or you have an idea, and it unhealthily sometimes keeps you up all night. But you've got something going and you got this flow. And it's enough that it has this balance of challenging your own skill set so that you get to the learning point, right? But it also has this thing where it's not frustrating and you can't get there, right? So in that gaming concept, or in psychology of flow, is it gives that intrinsic motivation. It gives that, example is games, video games. The reason why your kids can't get off of them is because it actually induces flow. There's a certain set of challenges for certain things. A good example is Portal 1 and 2. The reason why it was unique is the way they actually gamified that game, right? So that psychology of flow is what's really interesting. If you haven't looked at flow, there's a Wikipedia article on the psychology of flow, and it's actually fascinating. And then we're going to look at, this is all part of the positive reinforcement. We're going to add a game to the password stuff. And these games can go as far as, badges or whatever, or, contests or things like that. I even have the idea of, if you want to, report phishing, you can gamify that kind of stuff. Of course, that could be exploited. We won't mention that. But, but then we also have positive punishment. I was realizing that if you let the person choose their fate, but you say, this is the fate you're going to have, and you have a consequence to an action. Now, consequences aren't always bad. A consequence is just the result to the action, right? And you say the consequence is, I'm going to choose a weak password, and we're going to have you reset it every 3 days. We're going to let you know that. We're not even going to bitch about it. We're going to just say, okay, it'll be reset every 3 days. After a while, the cognitive load and the cost of that to the user is going to go, I better pay attention for a second. I think I'm going to read how this works. It's kind of like when people get behind a car and they put their key in a car and they're in a trance, not realizing they're driving a 3,000-pound vehicle that could kill them if they're not paying attention, right? But we don't really have that induction anymore. We're just gotten used to it. We take things for granted. Well, the same with our security industry right now. Even though it's Hollywood and cyber and everything's hot, we're still kind of stuck there. So since the industry has decided it's a people problem, I figured I'd take it to the level of the people, right? So we're going to actually look and give them positive punishment that the cognitive load cost will be higher, right? And which will enforce and it goes back to reinforcement, but it enforces them to actually have a cognitive awareness when they're actually learning about this. They'll finally will able to tell them by suggesting versus going, you're going to do this. Plus, most of the sites that you see anyways don't do the password stuff right anyways. So we're going to finally encourage them to learn about how to do it. And they're going to finally be like taking their security seriously, right? On their own, right? We give them that power, right? It's a trade-off, right? So we show them trust for once, right? And they become dependent on the information instead of us, right? This also will lower the number of phone calls in your office. So assumptions. So in this is an experiment, right? We're not here to say this is going to solve all problems, right? It's an idea that hit me while I was going to the bathroom, and seriously, it's got to be an experiment, right? So designed to measure results from samples, right? So we want to actually take this, make it an experiment, and use it in an enterprise environment. Don't think Gmails or that stuff, because Gmail will never do it because they'll feel like it decentivizes people to come to Gmail, even though two-factor authentication doesn't offer much difference there. But we're going to look at like enterprise internal employee systems, and we run a test on them. They almost like when you see the phish me test, and they check the phishing and things like that internally, right? We're going to assume good password storage. And when I say good password storage, today we don't use good password storage in general. Anybody heard of SRP, Secure Remote Password, Zero Knowledge Proof? When I actually posted this on the blog, I got an argument saying, oh, well, you can brute force that. I'm like, no, it's a discrete logarithm to find it filled. It's not brute forceable. That's not how that works. It's not. It's index calculus type of attacks, right? So, but it's not in the same way as that we're used to, and we don't have the tools that are readily available. And it's actually quite difficult, right? So, but there are ways to implement it properly, right? You're not sharing secrets, and you can actually have somewhat of a strength there, right? But we're going to assume good password security, whether it's hashes, SRPs, but we're going to have salts. We're going to do the proper thing. We're going to assume that, right? So details to users are provided, meaning we're going to teach them. We're going to let them have that control and understand. So we're not hiding it from them. We're explaining them how good passphrases work. This is a good idea to let them have that for once, and support and help and make sure if they don't understand something, we very much offer them an area of what is a passphrase? How is this measured? Things like that. Let's stop assuming the user is stupid, right? Lower bounds are decided upon prior. So the CISO will not allow a no password, or they can set up some, you can set up the staging for this, obviously, right? So look at it as a password payment schedule. This is just the high level one that I actually had come up with. Don't think about it as actual direct measurement against strong, weak, and strength passwords. It's not like, because it's a linear issue, you can't really go, because that one change can be everything between strong and based on those calculations. So we're going to just look at it as we're going to put them in set categories. If it's a weak password and it falls in that, it's going to set into an expiration of 3 days. If it's medium, it's 2 weeks. If it's strong, it's 60 days. And if it's passphrase, 90 days. Now, the funniest thing is I worked on this morning, and I had a demo. And actually, the demo, I have a lot of thanks for some people to help me to get this done, because I have a busy schedule with this. They did an amazing job. The cool part about it was I fell for it myself. It challenged me, and I wanted to get a 5-star rating for my passphrase. So the project goal, and I would, always enlist anybody's help on this. Been talking to OWASP and a few other people, but maybe we could build a PAM module that does this as an experiment and measures these things, right? So maybe someone in the Windows side also can help with an authentication module, things like that. Since obviously a lot of this stuff is AD, Active Directory, things like that, LDAP. We want to look at metrics, right? We're here to measure metrics. We're not here to say this idea works. We want to learn if it works, right? So we want to understand the percent of initial least effort passwords, right? So in that sense, we want to see how many people do not pretty much does not work on, right? How many times are they going to go through before they actually decide and see if that. They may never. This might actually give us an idea of what kind of personality types are, or how do people look at a positive reinforcement. You got to remember, people's reward systems when they're growing up can be skewed. In fact, there's been studies on kids who did Ritalin for like 20 years while they were growing up. Actually, it messes with their reward system. So you never know what medicines they were on, never know how they're raising it. So we might actually get a very interesting inductive reasoning off of this, which would be kind of neat. Also, the percentage of initial secure passwords that just start out, like people already are there. So we get a measurement or a sample of that as well. How many people already kind of got the message a long time ago, right? The success of change over time and over density, how many people have changed? So are we going to get a mass change over time really quickly, or are we going to get kind of like a trickle, right? And so we're going to measure that. We're going to get the failure rate, the minimum deviation of least effort over time. So this could actually do with something with where people are just not incentivized at their job in general. It might actually, give us insight to something else. You never know. It could be completely related to this, but it's things we could study, right? And then the success rate. How well did this thing do over time? Did we see a percentage of increase that was actually successful? And what's that measurement like? So I want to keep more ideas for this list. If you guys have some, I want to open that up to discussion. We can do it now, or we can actually do it later, because I have a demo actually to show you. So well, this is a hacked up demo. It's not, but it kind of gives you a cool like setup. I have to thank a few people for this, but it was actually really neat. Let me make sure I'm actually on the line. Let's go conventions. All right. Sorry, it keeps jumping to the other one. While we're waiting, does anybody have any ideas on the extra list, other things to measure? Yeah. Oops, sorry, those are my kids. Right. Yes, we could actually. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Let's add that on the list. How do I get? I think, is there a way to? Okay, this is getting. There we go. Cool. Sorry. That's what also we wanted to actually talk about there. And is obviously, should we prohibit them? Obviously, we want to, and we can build a gamification system to include that concept, right? So, for instance, in Active Directory alone, if you set up your the password policy correct, it won't let you even have like related password types, right? So let's again go back to the assumption that we still have certain rule sets that are in place, right? So we want to discourage that. Again, the long-term goal is get them to start using passphrases in general, right? So go ahead. So how do you check the strength, basically? Or, no, sorry. Correct. Right. Right. In this, it's an experiment. We may cheat on what you're doing, right? We may want to know the actual set data. We don't want to use this as actual enterprise level like setup. We want to see the experiment first. Right, so this actually experiment is designed to actually get people to start thinking about it, and maybe we get them there, and then when we apply it across the enterprise environment, we teach them that not to. But when maybe we actually do know what that password is, or we run it through entropy and see if there's an edit distance or kind of a deviation there. Right, so I think on the experiment side, we have to break some security rules more for the experiment itself. Right, it's not supposed to be this like we're setting this up to be a secure environment for using in your corporate. It's actually designed to get people to get this study to see if the study actually works. If that makes sense. No, actually, because after that we can still add policies there. I mean, there is ways that obviously the AD on the back end picks up any kind of variance, right? So whatever that is, Shelby, you might actually know what causes that. Right. Correct. Okay. Okay. So it is checking distance. So we can apply those policies in the back end. So, sorry. I've seen that. Yeah. Actually, at Deloitte, it definitely is. So I myself have tried to have related passwords. Don't we all? I'm trying to get this actually to fit the screen. That. There we go. Yay. Okay, we're going to log out for a second. Okay, so we have normal user Joe here, and his password is password for now for the demo. So, this a little bit. Sorry for that. So this is a mock-up of like a standard dashboard. You're in a web thing. Doesn't matter what it is. But we have is a change password. It's kind of hard to see. You have the current password, your new password, and your new password again, right? And over here we have change your password. Enter a new password for your account. We highly recommend you create a unique password, one that you do not use on other websites. Note you can't reuse your old password once you change it. So standard setup that they're already used to. So I'm going to actually type in password, right? Give me a really lame password. And this is a demo setup, so it's not perfect. The rules aren't what I would prefer, but we need to get this moving though. So give me a lame password, just like a lowercase. Huh? QWERTY. All right, QWERTY. How about QWERTY UIOP, right? QWERTY, everybody thinks that's good because it's long and stuff, and it's 64 bits technically. So now the cool thing is if I hit enter here, I see how many stars I get. I haven't even changed my password. And so it sits there and I go starting to go, oh, I got a one password, but we've all seen that before. So I go ahead and change my password. and it says your password will reset and expire in 3 days, right? So this is like, basic concept here, And what happened this morning, it was funny, because I was trying the demo out, checking all the bugs, making sure it was working, and then it caught me, and I'm like, well, I want to get to like 5 stars. And I actually started like catching myself going, all right, I got 3 stars, all right, let me go 4 stars. What the heck is the rule to getting 5 stars, right? Because actually my friends helped me make the demo, so they set up some of the rules. And it was funny, because then I was like, after a while, I was like, all right, let's do something, with maybe QWERTY 1, 2, 3, 4. QWERTY 1, 2, 3, 4, right? QWERTY 1, 2, 3, 4. QWERTY 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? I hit that. I got 2 stars. I'm like, oh, cool. Yes, right. So after a while, I'm like, what the heck do I got to do? And so what I built was a star chart. Get it? Like kids when you get like a star on the board. Okay. Anyways, so 1 star only lowercase. In this case, this is a set of rules. You would create your own rule sets for this stuff. These are not valid. Do not go by these obviously rules. But lower end, 2 stars is lower and uppercase. 3 stars lower and uppercase. Special characters. 4 stars lower uppercase. 5 stars, all characters type with a great length greater than 12. So 1 star is 3 days, 2 stars 14, 3 stars 30 days, 4 stars 60 days, and 5 stars is 90 days. So actually, it fooled me. I actually felt challenged, and I'm like, I want a freaking 5 star. So I'm like, oh gosh, I got caught up by the idea itself, and it actually did the challenge piece, because then you see this very vividly. And no offense, but I think stars actually affect people because of our childhood or something, because it really does actually work. And so I ran it by even my fiance, and she's like, I actually wanted to get to 5 stars too, right? So we actually made this fix this morning. I wanted to have a thing. How do I get to 5 stars? Because before it's like learn more. But if we're actually like, how do I get to 5 stars? You're kind of enabling that gamification. How do I get there? Things like that. So finally, using my fiance's name with a combination of things, I was like lucky to, yes, and I think I got it, right? Hold on. Oops, do it right there. And, oh, yes, right? So I finally changed my password. And guess what? I got 90 days, and I'm awesome. So that's a demo. I'm going to go back to the actual, and we go back there. So anyways, just any questions, ideas, things like that, please. Correct. Yes. Right. So the problem is now you're managing more than 1, 2, 3, and I actually like partially the idea. I mean, we're so stuck in the InfoSec community to tell everybody strong passwords. So I'm going to have to break my mindset too a little bit. So, but I realize that the problem with it is if you even go back to the risk management issues, why APT1 or APTs get on your freaking network is because we don't do risk management issues. We allow these lower risk assets to access and go laterally and do things like that. So the problem is that does put the incentivization back to the IT department too, and maybe we actually drive something on both sides, right? There's responsibility on both sides. You're actually putting liability in both hands. Accountability. Everybody's got it finally, right? So I think that's something worth further discussion. Correct. Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that's definitely pondered. Does anybody else have any opinion on that, actually?
Thank you. I think that we need strong passwords for the personal identification, but then we need a switch to an automated system that will provide a strong password that is really, I won't go into how random it is, but it is complex.
Yes.
Okay. and it's strong, and it's not been chosen by a human.
Yeah.
And just to switch the context, or just to provide, or to proxy the connection, or to whatever the way that the architecture in the network is set up, but not to enable strong passwords being chosen to sensitive assets to be chosen by human beings.
Yeah, and I think in corporate environments, that's actually somewhat more common in a lot of environments. I know that the password generator is properly done.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines, it'd be interesting to say you can get up to 4 stars if you're picking your own, but you can get 5 stars if you let the machine do it for you.
Really cool.
Joseph Bonneau has a paper that he's doing at Usenix in a couple of weeks on how to memorize passwords and do spaced repetition training
How
stuff.
do we get that memorization system?
And so kind of turning that in, recognizing that it is a game, but it's longer than just the 30 seconds during this window when you're setting up the password.
Correct.
You should treat it as a longer purpose. And the other sort of incentive you might provide there is extra features that you can access.
Right.
If there are more things you can do with the account, if you've
Reward
proven
for
that you
that,
can manage
get a
it.
top list of better password people get like better features, more admin access.
You can effectively, so in the theme of humans can't remember passwords, and it's my opinion that we shouldn't ask them to because we have machines for that. You can effectively require someone to use a password manager by saying your password's got to be 200 characters long, and it can't contain any
We're
words.
used to password managers, honestly. I've actually seen them at work, commonly used by a lot more people these days, and on both on their mobile and in their desktops.
And then, a system like this can say you only get the 5th star if you use a password manager, and you, without needing to understand the technology of the password manager, you just make the password requirement completely unreasonable.
Right.
And then someone has to use a password manager for this
I don't
asset.
think this is about passwords per se. I think it's about getting them where we want them to be, right? Like, and so I think we all agree on that. That it's, we can modify this, choose this however we want. The cool thing is we could probably build templates for this, like a PAM module for the experiment itself, so that we could try different things and see how the success is in that. I think really it comes down to a good training module, almost like training humans. I mean, I feel bad about that, but it's what it is.
So I really like the idea. I think this is great. I love when people just kind of test the boundaries and say we haven't always done it right, but let's try something new. In light of that, what's the next step to actually doing something like this on a larger scale?
Well, I implore all of you guys to contact me and see if we can put like a working group and maybe have fun with this. Maybe actually bring some academia in it that I'm working on, like for instance the papers about the memorization. I do not foresee this being by itself. I think it's going to come with the memorization concepts and some more, maybe even stuff Stanford was working on. And we start kind of looking at like this problem at a higher level instead of like staring at the entropy and all the other stuff. We've got that solved. Now it's getting the human to understand this. And I think, so I implore everybody to, like, anybody who wants to like contact me, I'll give you my contact. Actually, I'll just give you that. So many thanks to this guy. He doesn't want his name revealed. Unix Ninja. His wife did actually the design for the actual demo, like the actual stuff. That was actually awesome. Michelle Aurelio and Tom. He doesn't want his name released either, but he helped me infrastructure and get all this integrated this morning, so it was awesome. And Yoda's awesome, so we all know that. So, but yeah. So just feel free to hit me up. And I think that it's an idea, right? I want to get it going and let's see if we can do something cool with it, right? So I mean, spread it around, tell people about it, like see if people are interested in something, and let's get some minds on it first. Let's not run with it. Let's sit in actually, even if it meant conference call or something like that, we sit down and say, well, what do we want to try? What do we want to build? And we'll make a goal out of it. So I would love to see something, implemented, even if it's like on an OWASP test site or something. Go ahead.
To implement something like this, in school systems or somehow,
Get 'em early.
exactly, reach kids early and get them thinking about, how to construct secure passwords, but also, expose them to information security topics as well a little earlier.
The child is a beginner's mind. This is going to be
Exactly.
less assumptions going through, less blockage. They're just going to, it's like them learning a language. So yeah, good feedback on that. Thanks. Yep. What are you trying to say, bro? Thank you guys, everyone. So. Mother